What if I told you that the single most important decision of your life could happen before the sun even rises? Not a business deal, not a marriage proposal, not a career choice. Just one quiet, invisible moment. The moment you decide to get up, when everything inside you is screaming to stay down. Most people never discover this. They sleep through it. They hit snooze on it. Then one day, they look up and wonder why their life never quite became what they imagined it would be. This is the story of a man who found the answer at 5 in the morning. A man who had nothing, no money, no connections, no safety net. A man who had every reason to stay in bed and every reason to give up. But he didn't. Then, what happened next changed not just his life, but the lives of everyone around him. Stay with me, because somewhere in his story, you're going to find a piece of your own. His name was Daniel. And if you had met him 10 years ago, you would never have believed what he would eventually become. Daniel grew up in a small, tired town in the Midwest, the kind of place where ambition was quietly discouraged and survival was quietly celebrated. His father worked 2 jobs his whole life and still died with debt. His mother cleaned houses 6 days a week. They weren't bitter people. They were just worn-down people, and without meaning to, they passed that weariness on to Daniel like a family heirloom. By the time Daniel was 32, he was living in a 1-bedroom apartment with a broken radiator, a part-time job at a grocery store, and a credit card that was maxed out buying groceries. He wasn't lazy. That's the part people always misunderstand when they hear stories like his. He wasn't sitting around watching TV and blaming the world. He was working. He was trying. He was just stuck in a cycle he didn't yet have the tools to break. He'd tried things. He'd taken an online course he couldn't finish. He'd started a small reselling business that lost money in the first month. He'd applied to better jobs and heard nothing back. Every attempt felt like throwing rocks into a river and watching them disappear without a ripple. After a while, you stop throwing rocks. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. And then one night, everything shifted. It was November. Daniel was sitting at his kitchen table at 11 o'clock at night, staring at an eviction notice. His landlord had given him 30 days to come up with 2 months of back rent or find somewhere else to go. He had $47 in his bank account. He didn't cry. He didn't rage. He just sat there in the silence of that cold kitchen. And for the first time in years, he was completely honest with himself. He thought, something has to change, and it has to start with me. Spores. He pulled out his phone and started scrolling. Not social media, not YouTube videos of people living in mansions. He started searching for real stories. Stories of people who had started with nothing and built something. He read for hours. He read about discipline, about early mornings, about the quiet power of doing hard things before the world wakes up. And somewhere around 2 in the morning, he read a single line that stopped him cold. It said, "The first battle of every day is fought not in the boardroom or the marketplace. It's fought in your bedroom. The moment you choose to rise." He read it 3 times. Then he set his alarm for 5 a.m., something he hadn't done voluntarily in his entire adult life, and he went to sleep. When the alarm went off, it was still dark. The radiator was ticking, and the room was cold. Every cell in his body told him to reach over and turn it off. He almost did. His hand was literally hovering over the phone. But he thought about that eviction notice on the kitchen table, and he got up. He didn't have a plan. He didn't have a journal or a morning routine or a productivity app. He just stood in his kitchen in the dark, made a cup of instant coffee, and sat down. For the first 30 minutes, he did nothing but think. Not panic. Think. He asked himself questions he'd been too tired to ask at the end of a long day. What am I actually good at? Small services he could offer to neighbors and local businesses. Nothing glamorous. Nothing that was going to make him rich overnight. Just honest, practical steps from someone who finally had the mental space to think clearly. That morning lasted 2 hours before he had to get ready for his shift at the grocery store. But those 2 hours felt different from any 2 hours he'd spent in years. He felt like he'd reclaimed something, like he'd taken back a small piece of his own life. He set the alarm again for the next morning. Here's what most people don't understand about 5 a.m. and about discipline in general. It's not about suffering. It's not about proving something to the world or torturing yourself into productivity. By the time evening comes, you have nothing left for the things that actually matter to you. But 5 a.m.? At 5 a.m., the world is asleep. No one is asking anything of you. The notifications haven't started. The demands haven't arrived. There's a stillness at that hour that is genuinely hard to find anywhere else in modern life. And in that stillness, the brain does something remarkable. Research has shown that the early morning hours, particularly those first quiet hours after waking, are when the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for goal setting, decision-making, and creative thinking, is at its sharpest. Before the stress of the day floods your system with cortisol, your mind is clean. It's open. It's powerful. Daniel didn't know any of this when he first set his alarm. He just knew something was different about those mornings. He felt it in his bones before he could explain it in words. For the first 2 weeks, he used those early hours to plan. He identified 3 things he could offer right now with zero startup cost: handyman help for neighbors, grocery runs for elderly residents in his building, and basic social media management for a couple of small local businesses he'd noticed had terrible online presence. He made a simple flyer, designed it himself on his phone, and slipped copies under doors and into mailboxes in the surrounding blocks. He charged modest rates, fair rates, not desperate rates. By the end of the first month, he had 6 small clients. It wasn't enough to save him from the eviction. He ended up negotiating a payment plan with his landlord and sleeping on a friend's couch for 3 weeks while he caught up on rent. But here's the thing about momentum that people don't tell you. It's not about the money at first. It's about the identity shift. Every morning that Daniel got up at 5, he was casting a vote. Not for success, not yet, but for a different version of himself. Sort of his social media clients. A small bakery owned by a woman named Patricia mentioned him to her brother, who ran a mid-sized landscaping company. 2. The brother needed someone organized and reliable to handle his crew scheduling and client communications. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid 3 times what Daniel made at the grocery store. He took it immediately. He kept the alarm at 5. He kept the quiet mornings. But now he used them differently. He was learning, watching YouTube tutorials on business operations, reading articles on client management, studying how successful small businesses were structured. He was building a skill set with no deadline and no teacher except his own curiosity. Within 6 months of that first eviction notice, Daniel had left the grocery store. He had a legitimate income. He had a system. He had something rarer and more valuable than both. He had respect, not the self-esteem that comes from other people's validation, but the deep, quiet, unshakable kind that comes from knowing what you're capable of. The kind that only gets built by repeatedly doing the thing you didn't think you could do. People often ask, is 5 a.m. the magic number? Does it have to be 5 specifically? And the honest answer is no. The hour itself isn't the point. The point is the principle. The principle is this: protect a portion of every day for your own growth, your own thinking, your own becoming, before the world has a chance to consume you. For Daniel, it was 5 a.m. because that was the only window that worked. For you, it might be 6. It might be it might be a late night if your life genuinely requires it. But something has to be sacred. Some window of time has to be yours and yours alone, not for entertainment. Not for distraction, but for the serious, quiet, unglamorous work of building the life you actually want. The tragedy isn't that people don't have enough hours, or the tragedy is that they give away the most valuable ones without thinking. They wake up and immediately hand their attention to someone else, to social media, to news, to other people's emergencies. And then they wonder why they never make progress on the things that matter most to them. Your attention is your most valuable resource. More than your money. More than your connections. More than your talent. Guard it like your life depends on it, because in a very real sense, the quality of your life does. 3 years after that night at the kitchen table, Daniel ran a small but thriving operations consulting business. He had a team of 4 people. He owned a modest home, nothing extraordinary, but his own. He had savings for the first time in his life, but the number that meant the most to him wasn't in his bank account, it was this. He had gone 1,047 consecutive mornings without hitting snooze. 1,047 mornings of choosing himself before the world woke up. He told me once, because yes, I know Daniel, and this story is real. He said, people think discipline is about willpower, about gritting your teeth and forcing yourself, but it's not. After a while, it becomes identity. You don't have to fight yourself anymore, because you've become someone who just does it. And that person, that version of you, is capable of things the old you couldn't even imagine. He paused, and then he said something I've never forgotten. The morning doesn't change your circumstances, it changes you. And when you change, everything else eventually follows. I want you to sit with that for a moment. Because wherever you are right now, whatever debt you're carrying, whatever dream you've postponed, whatever version of yourself you wish you could become, none of it is too far gone. None of it is beyond the reach of one simple, radical decision made before sunrise. You don't need a perfect plan. Daniel didn't have one. You don't need connections or capital or the right last name. He had none of those things. What you need is a window of time that belongs entirely to you, and the willingness to use it honestly. Start tomorrow, not Monday, not the first of the month. Tomorrow, set your alarm, make your coffee, sit in the quiet, and ask yourself the questions you've been too tired to ask. What do I actually want? What am I actually capable of? What is one real, honest step I can take today? The answers won't come all at once, but they'll come. They always do, when you finally get quiet enough to hear them. The 5 a.m. alarm isn't a punishment. It's an invitation. An invitation to meet the version of yourself that's been waiting patiently in the silence. The one who's been there all along, just waiting for you to show up. Show up tomorrow, and then again the next day. And the day after that. That's the secret. It was never complicated. It was only hard. And hard things done consistently have a way of building extraordinary lives. If this story moved something in you, if some part of Daniel's journey felt like a mirror held up to your own, then share it. Send it to someone who's in that dark kitchen moment right now, staring at a problem that feels too big to solve. Tell them that one morning can't fix everything, but one morning can start everything, too. And if you want more stories like this, real, honest, human stories about what it actually takes to turn a life around, subscribe. Because we're just getting started. The alarm is set. The question is, will you get up?